How is the outfield going to look for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2024 with the addition of Michael A. Taylor? We're going to talk about that and answer more of your questions on Mailbag Friday.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can see it right there on that lower third if you're on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You may also be noticing something about the background of the show throughout this week, as well as the background that we currently have right now. Things are happening, folks. You'll get an update on that from me, probably via Twitter, maybe even on this show. We'll keep you guys updated on all of the happenings of your favorite host of the Locked On Pirates podcast. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. I'm staying right here with Locked On. And folks, as you know, we had the MLB preview show yesterday that was on my channel. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed that. Looking at the NL Central was kind of farther down in that episode, but we talked about the NL Central as some predictions. Next week, of course, Monday through Wednesday, we're going to have our 3-part prediction show where we're talking about MLB predictions, Pirates predictions, roster predictions, everything in the world that we can predict. We're going to be doing all of that. And my predictions might surprise you folks, because I think the National League as a whole is just going to have a bunch of teams competing for spots in the playoffs. Maybe even this Pittsburgh Pirates team. This Pittsburgh Pirates team that also added Michael A. Taylor to the fold last weekend. We talked about that on Monday, of course, with Gary Morgan alongside the Domingo Germán acquisition. But it is a Mailbag Friday. You guys love the mailbag shows. You usually eat them up. You guys love, of course, posting all of your questions, and I always answer every single question to the best of my ability, and that's what we will be doing today. And as you can see in the thumbnail, a question from Corey. By the way, you're going to see me kind of look at my phone right now while I'm doing all this. Really, a lot of the questions were about the makeup of the outfield. Corey asked, the speculated outfield will be Brian Reynolds in left field, Michael A. Taylor in center field, and Jack Suwinski in right field via Pirates fans. Yeah, so there's nothing, before I continue to read the rest of the question, there is nothing official about what they've decided to do with this outfield with adding Michael A. Taylor just yet. But to continue with Corey's question, I feel it should be Jack Suwinski in left field, Michael A. Taylor in center field, and Brian Reynolds in right field, due to Reynolds being the more experienced player. Your thoughts? I also had another question on this from Open Creations, who said, do you see Taylor and Suwinski in the same lineup, or strictly a platoon deal, which depends on lefty-righty opposing pitcher? So those were basically the big questions that were highlighted on the outfield and that I wanted to start with. And I think it's interesting that you don't get the opportunity very often to add a plus defender to your outfield via free agency, especially for the price tag that you got him for. Now, Michael A. Taylor, as I've said on the show, he's going to be that power fielding guy. He's not going to have the high batting average. He's going to hit some over the fence occasionally. Jack Suwinski's a lot like that too. Brian Reynolds, we know who Brian Reynolds is. But when you're looking at the outfield makeup of this team, obviously, of course, with the news that Joshua Palacios was optioned to the minor leagues, that removes him from this outfield talk. You have Edward Olivares, who hasn't had the strongest spring in the world, as a potential fourth outfield option. You also even have Billy McKinney, a guy that a lot of people in the offseason were like, yeah, this move is just whatever at this point. But you have a guy in Billy McKinney who could also potentially do some things and be a decent fourth outfielder for you. You have a guy like Connor Joe that could also kind of do that as well. But when you factor in having Michael A. Taylor in center field. I mean, you're looking at a guy who is a plus outs above average fielder, 90th percentile pretty much everywhere on StatCast as far as fielding is concerned. So, yeah, I mean, I could see it in a lot of different ways. I think Brian Reynolds obviously will be occupying one of the corner outfield spots. We obviously saw him play left field a lot last year. He played center field the year before that. So we've even seen him play a little bit of right field, I think, in his professional career as well. So he has experience playing all three outfield spots. But Brian Reynolds is that guy that you can definitely slot in and say, yeah, he's going to be in one of the corner outfield spots. Then you get into that interesting mold where it's like, okay, do they do the platoon with Michael A. Taylor and Jack Sawinski, as Open Creation said, depending on the pitching matchup? If it's a righty on the mound, you're probably going to want Sawinski out there, who's not the worst defender in center field. He's not Michael A. Taylor level defense out in center field, but he's still a very average defender out there that can get it done if he needs to. And I don't think you really want to waste Michael A. Taylor's defense in right field. I could see worlds where Sawinski and Michael A. Taylor, of course, are in the lineup on the same day. I think that just can happen. Obviously, injuries happen. You have matchups that could dictate that. You have a lot of different things that can dictate that. But as for right now and what I think the outfield makeup would be, I do understand that for the most part, this is something that you're going to have to worry about. And I also just realized mid-recording this, by the way, that this is wrong. So do not pay attention to on today's show. It is wrong, but we are fine. You guys can listen to me on that front. It's fine. It'll be all right. See, it's the power of podcasting. Sometimes you get all the way through and you realize, oh, this is off. So I'll probably fix it after this first segment. But also, when you get back to the outfield makeup, I mean, the better your defense is, the better it helps you with guys that the Pirates also acquired in free agency. I mean, they acquire guys in Martin Perez and Marco Gonzalez, who are definitely BABIP guys. They're guys that play to contact. They're not going to be high strikeout number guys. They're going to be soft tossing lefties. Mitch Keller's your strikeout guy, but then you also still have those questions in the rotation as well about how those guys are going to perform, and having a strong outfield group behind them, especially having those guys in positions where they can thrive in those positions defensively, like a Michael A. Taylor in center field, I think will go a long way with helping this pitching staff. And you also look at the other defensive pieces that you already have. You have Jared Triolo, who's going to be a strong utility man in the infield. You have a Gold Glove winner in Key Brian Hayes at third base. You have a guy who has plenty of range at shortstop in Oneil Cruz, who's still learning the position. But if he does pick up and learn the position, you got to expect that that left side of the infield could be a real defensive positive for any pitcher that's pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So what I would expect is, I think Reynolds will probably stick in left field. I think that's just a spot that he's comfortable in. It's not really the spot that a lot of people would probably want to see him in, but it is a spot that for him, he's played all of last year. I think that's where he'll stick. I would say that you might have Sawinski play in right field and then Michael A. Taylor in center. Obviously, Sawinski can play a lot of center field in that platoon role. I'd also just expect a lot of Connor Joe. I mean, he manned right field pretty well last year. He was a very good outs above average guy. He wasn't negative in that category. He was positive. He wasn't overly positive in the outs above average category, but he was positive enough to the point where you're saying, okay, if you throw him in right field, you're fine. Maybe you throw Olivares out there too in right field and get some power in the lineup with that expected home run number that he had last year. And yeah, I mean, the Pirates have options in the outfield. And I think that's the biggest thing that Michael A. Taylor signing that I wanted to happen months ago really did for them, is it's a move that really just gives them options now. They can run a platoon in center field if they want to. They can slide a Jack Sawinski to right field if they want to. They can even put Reynolds in right field if they really want to. It gives them defensive options in the outfield now. And then that's, again, not mentioning the likes of Joshua Palacios and Billy McKinney and Edward Olivares and potentially a Joe Perez down the line, or a Matt Gorski or a Matt Frazier who could slot into that right field spot at any point. really this year. And I think that that's very important that the Pirates have done that not only in the outfield, but they've done that really in a lot of different spots. I mean, you have options in the middle infield with Piguero, Triolo, maybe even a defensive option in Alika Williams, who's still at camp. Nick Gonzalez obviously got sent down to camp, and Alika Williams is still there. I think that should tell you a lot about how this team views a guy like Alika Williams defensively, especially if Cruz needs to DH every once in a while. Triolo can play shortstop too. But that's the thing that I like about this team right now is they might not be the sexiest options in the world, but they are options nonetheless. And that's what they've done in this outfield now with the addition of Michael A. Taylor. And I kind of compare the Michael A. Taylor signing to the Aroldis Chapman signing. I mean, the Aroldis Chapman signing, you could argue that the outfield for the Pirates with Sawinski and Reynolds was already a pretty strong group, and it got stronger with adding Michael A. Taylor, especially defensively. And then when you added Aroldis Chapman to that bullpen, which was already really good, it helped you now. And Dauri Moreta had Tommy John surgery. He's going to be out for the year. David Bednar just debuted in spring yesterday, so we don't really know how his health looks throughout the entire season. But adding a guy like Chapman made that bullpen group deeper. And I think that that's really what this team has just strived to do throughout the offseason is just have options. They have options everywhere. And that is very, very good in a winnable division, because you're going to have injuries that are going to happen throughout the year. And if you have guys that you could trust as options to come up and say, hey, when that guy's out there, I'm not as scared as I used to be when a guy like Josh Van Meter or John Nagowski or one of these guys was out there in the field. Now you have real MLB options on this team. And Michael A. Taylor's signing, and especially the outfield makeup, got a lot better and a lot clearer with the Michael A. Taylor signing. So I think that it was a slam dunk for the Pittsburgh Pirates, not only at the price tag they got him, which again, not starting price tag money, but defensively you got better. You added a little bit of pop to the lineup in Michael A. Taylor when he's there. And I think he's just a natural born leader in that outfield, and that's what he's going to be. We're going to answer more of your questions here on Mailbag Friday. But before we do, folks, we're going to talk about Ibata. Ibata. Download the Ibata app today. It's free to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB to do so because, Ibata, it's a free app that gives you the most cash back every time that you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns about $145 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Buy that flight that you've been eyeing, or that game you're dying to go to, or even the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that really don't amount to much. With Ibata, just add your offers in the app. Upload your receipt, and you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. So join the over 50 million savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. That's IBOTTA in the Google app, Google Play Store or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB to start saving money today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon for all of your betting needs, because many of you probably had Kentucky beating Oakland yesterday. Well, Kentucky lost. So say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the March Madness tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Folks, it's just $5 to win $200. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all, and you could throw a little sprinkle of the Pirates over under if you want to. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. And FanDuel is a proud sponsor of the Locked On Pirates podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. We're going to continue answering some of your questions on today's show. And from Big E97, he says, give us one underrated Pirates prospect not on their top 30 list. So I will say this. I know about the prospects well enough to know like their strengths, their weaknesses, all that stuff like me. But um I don't really know much outside of the top 30. So I look to Fangraphs for this for their depth chart, and you look at guys that I think really could make an impact at some point. You look at some of these guys at the upper levels of the system. You go to AAA and AA, for instance. You have guys like Poyo Chen. Don't remember if he's in the top 30. I don't think he is. You have guys like, potentially a Scott Randall, who was a part of a trade in 2022. Owen Kellington, who's a high A plus guy. He was a draft pick from the 4th round not too long ago. I think he'll be fun. We all remember the name JP Massey. He's now 24. He's another fun name that I think you could look at. You go to the outfield and you have guys like Eddie Rodriguez, who we really got to see in the spring breakout game. Hudson Head, who was a big part of that San Diego Padres trade from a long time ago in 2021. I think he's a guy that you can watch. PJ Wilson, he was a Rule 5 AAA pick in 2023 outside of the San Francisco Giants. Watch him a little bit. Obviously, you have guys like Luke Brown, Connor Scott, even Sammy Ciani, Rodolfo Nolasco. Those are names that you can also look at. You look at Javier Rivas. He's one of the lower shortstops in the system, of course, behind guys like Chang, Mitch Jebb, Mike Eliscado, Yordi De Los Santos, Johnny Severino, another guy that I think could be really fun. Obviously, still 19. Going to be fun to watch him grow. Obviously, we had you have Garrett Forster. I think he's in the top 30. But you also have a guy like Kaylee Harrison. I think he could be very fun over at third base. There's a lot of guys. I mean, obviously, we had Josiah Seitler on the show last year, and he had a very, very fun stretch of games last year. He's still only 24, former 15th round pick in 2022. Josiah Seitler, I think, is a kid to watch, and really just any of those first baseman prospects, because, I mean, we all know that the depth in the system at first base is just not good. It could be a lot better. But a guy like Malcolm Nunez, who dropped out of the top 30 on MLB Pipeline, who was very hyped up last year, could have a bounce back season and really come back and do some good things. You look at guys like Aaron Shackelford, you look at Will Matheson, you look at Josiah Seitler. I really think Josiah Seitler of that group really has a lot of upside. He has some real power on the left side of the plate. I think he really, if he grows into what he could be a valuable bench option on this team eventually. He could be somebody that could come up and just be a power lefty bat at first base, plays pretty decent defense over there too. So I'd probably say if I had to name anybody outside of the top 30, it would probably be Malcolm Nunez, Poyo Chen, or Josiah Seitler that you could keep your eyes on as far as prospects are concerned. But we'll learn more about that. I mean, there's going to be every year in every system, you're going to have that Luis Ortiz type guy who you don't really expect to do much and you don't even really know their name. And then all of a sudden they're coming up to the MLB level or they're jumping into the top 30. So you're going to have those kind of guys every single year. Open Creations also asked another question. Who do you want in your opening day rotation? I would like Mitch Keller, Martin Perez, Jared Jones, Luis Ortiz, and Marco Gonzalez. So I'm going to talk about this a lot more when we do the preview show. Obviously, I think we're going to have a lot more answers to this question when we get to that point. But really, I mean, the fact that Jared Jones is still at Major League camp right now, I think is something that is very important to what their decision-making is on this rotation. You obviously know you're going to have Mitch Keller, you're going to have Jared Jones, and you're going to have Mitch Keller, you're going to have Perez, and you're going to have Gonzalez. Those are going to be the three guys that are going to be definites in the rotation. You're going to have those guys there. You know you're going to have those guys there. No worries at all that you would have to worry about there. After that, Luis Ortiz has had a pretty good spring. I think he's done enough to probably get one of those two spots. So then you're looking at Jared Jones. You're looking at Quinn Priester. You're looking at Chase Anderson, Willie Peralta. Eric Lauer is another guy that you can look at that could be a part of this rotation. Appears right now that the Pirates also view Roansy Contreras as a reliever, so that kind of removes him from that. I don't think Bailey Falter is going to occupy one of these final two spots. I really don't. So I think you're on the right track open creations, I think that's something that you could potentially see is Keller, Perez, Jones, Ortiz, and Gonzalez. That's honestly what I would probably want to see, but that decision's going to be made here soon. It's going to be a decision probably on Monday or Tuesday, because we know that Mitch Keller is the opening day starter. They're going to have assignments for Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I don't think they get the day off this year after the fact, so I think they just play throughout the entire weekend in a 3 or 4 game set. I'd have to look at the schedule again. I've been so laser focused on Sunday that I'm like, or not Sunday, on Thursday, that I don't even remember how many games are in that series. But yeah, I mean, I think you're on the right track. I think that's really what you can expect is probably Keller, Perez, Jones, Ortiz, Gonzalez. I just really think that Jared Jones has done enough. I think he has. Now, don't be shocked that if he does start up here right away, that by July, he's getting sent back down to AAA to monitor his arm, because he's never really pitched over a certain amount of innings in his career yet. And you don't want to blow his arm out. We've had tons of Tommy John surgery issues with JT Brubaker, Mike Burrows. Obviously, you now have Dauri Moreta. You don't want to have more of them. So you're going to take care of Jared Jones in every way you can. And I think that that's very important for the Pittsburgh Pirates to do. Now, obviously, these wins in April mean as much as they do in September. And Jared Jones, I think, being in the rotation gives you a better chance to win a game every 5 days than a Eric Lauer or a Quinn Priester at this current juncture. But again, we'll talk about that a lot more on the show in the preview shows Monday through Wednesday. Thursday, I'm hoping, by the way, that we're going to have Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins on the show to preview opening day. Obviously, opening day will also have the post-game show. It will be live right after the game is done. We'll have it going for you. You'll be right here on YouTube. It'll be uploaded to your audio platforms immediately after. But we still have a couple more questions to answer. And before we do that, folks, we're going to talk about Amazon Fire TV. Amazon Fire TV channels is your sports destination. And to learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Because are you watching... there we go. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV also offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick. You plug into television that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV channels also let you dive into all of the game analysis from the Locked On Podcast Network, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. You also get great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOn Fire TV to be in the know for your sports today. And loyal third segment listeners, thank you for being here for the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on Friday, March 22nd. We are inching closer and closer and closer to opening day against the Miami Marlins on March 28th. And as some of you know, I will also be in PNC Park on April 5th for Pirates opening day against the Baltimore Orioles. Very excited for that. I'm going to be giving you guys more details on my whereabouts throughout the day, where my tickets are. If you want to meet me, just DM me on Twitter. I'll follow you, so you can DM me on Twitter. Hit me up. I want to meet everybody. That is the whole purpose of that trip. I want to meet absolutely everyone and get looks at everybody that listens to this show, because you guys are the best fans that a podcast host could ask for. Now, we move on to Brendan's question. What will be the distance of Oneil Cruz's hardest hit home run in PNC Park this season? That is very specific. We've seen Oneil Cruz throughout spring. I've talked about him a good bit. We've seen him do some good things so far in spring training, obviously with the homers and the exit velocities, and he just looks healthy. He looks effortless, and you're really enjoying what we've seen from Oneil Cruz in spring so far. It's hard not to. Now, what will be the distance of his home run and his hardest hit home run in PNC Park? It's kind of hard to gauge that just because, I mean, when you're hitting a ball that hard, the chances are the launch angle is probably a little bit lower, so the distance might be a little bit smaller. But I'm going to go 445 feet. I think he'll hit one 445 feet for his hardest hit one. Now, his like farthest one, I think he can get 460. And I think he'll reach the Allegheny River this year too. I think he will get one in the river this year, throw it in the pond, as they like to say, and clear the deck cannonball coming, because that cannonball will be flying off the bat of Oneil Cruz. And really, again, the biggest thing that I keep saying about Oneil Cruz going into this year: improve on the walk numbers, improve on the whiff and the swing and misses, keep hitting the baseball hard, learn how to play defensive shortstop, and stay healthy. Staying healthy is going to be the biggest thing for Oneil Cruz. It just is. And for the hope of seeing him hit a ball very, very hard outside of PNC Park this year, I think you're going to want him to stay healthy to do that. He also asked, Brendan, who will lead the team in stolen bases this year? This one's interesting too. You have plenty of options. I mean, you have guys with speed on this team, like a Jack Sawinski. You have guys like Brian Reynolds who could steal the base pass too. I think you have to go to Oneil Cruz though. Oneil Cruz flies on the base paths. And I think, again, and I've said it on the show, he has real 20, maybe even 30 potential this year if he plays an entire season. So that's something that I think you could expect from Oneil Cruz to lead the team in stolen bases. Ji-Hwan Bae has been dealing with an injury and also might not even make the roster anyway, so that kind of eliminates that. You have a guy in Edward Olivares who has a pretty decent blend of power and speed, but won't be an everydayer. So I think as far as the everydayers go, I do think Oneil Cruz would be the one to lead in stolen bases for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. John, with our final question of the day, says, what food and drinks will be bought on opening day? Well, if you're talking about opening day for March 28th, I'm probably going to get some wings, probably going to have some beer, probably IPAs, watch the game, going to have a very fun time. Obviously, sober up a little bit before we get back on the live show. I think that'll be very fun to have that live show post-game, win or lose, just because we're getting our first look at what the team is going to look like in 2024. As far as opening day in Pittsburgh goes, obviously, I said that I will be mentioning this a little bit more on Twitter so that you guys can kind of have it and listen to the show. You can know. I will more than likely be at Mike's Beer Bar pregame April 5th. So I will have pictures on Twitter and all of that other stuff and be trying to meet everybody. I also want to meet a lot of the other Pittsburgh podcasters around here, like the guys over in North Shore 9, obviously Gary Morgan, going to meet him and get that picture done, hopefully. And I want to meet all you guys, like Pirates Queen Banshee. Want to meet her. Know she listens to the show. Absolute wonderful human being. And there's a lot of you guys that I hope that I get to meet on opening days. Food and drinks for that, man. You know I'm going to have to get a Permane sandwich when I get up there somehow. Obviously, it's not going to probably be opening day, but I'm probably going to go to downtown Pittsburgh again one of those days. And really, I just think it's going to be fun. I mean, as far as Thursday, I just think wings or pizza is a staple for opening day, or even just making a really nice meal because it should be a national holiday. Baseball opening day should be a national holiday where nobody has to work. That's what I will always say. And the Pirates, again, under the lights in Sarasota tonight. Thank you for those questions, guys. And we have a fun little lineup tonight that I really am intrigued by. This just came out. It'll be Oneil Cruz, Brian Reynolds, Key Brian Hayes, Jack Sawinski, Andrew McCutchen, Rowdy Tellez, Henry Davis, Michael A. Taylor, Jared Triolo, and Jared Jones on the bump. Very interesting. That could be an opening day lineup. I could see that being an opening day lineup, folks. And we'll see what the Pirates decide to do, because next week will be the first full week where we have regular season baseball to talk about, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Again, my name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me again right there on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Again, for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, every day. Folks, thank you so much again for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you on Monday with Gary Morgan to start the preview and predictions show, part 1 of 3. But until then, see you on the flip side.